afternoon, Dundee, and welcome to our creative workshop series.
So at the moment there's a massive lag in terms of getting research into practice. It's something like 17 to 20 years from doing a piece of research to actually seeing it being implemented and being used. And my role in the NHS is to try and develop allied health professionals' research culture and skills to upskill them to be able to find and access and use research and get it into practice. But what that does is it puts all of the onus on the health professionals for this big lag and this gap between research getting into practice. And what we're trying to do here is to say that actually researchers need to be a whole lot better at producing research products that are more useful, more usable, more accessible and much more targeted towards what allied health professionals actually need. So we've brought together allied health professionals, researchers and people from various creative fields. So we've got people from poets to technologists to designers to try and bring that different lens to the problem to see if we can find the space in between our disciplines to do something new and radical.
I've got quite a long-standing interest in design and co-design, but I haven't actually done much of it hands-on myself, so the chance to come and actually take part in some co-design workshops was really intriguing.
I am actually a researcher, but I've got a background as a practitioner, and it's quite exciting to be able to put the two things together and to be in a room with lots of people who are as interested as I am in how you get knowledge to work for our services and our people, and really in ourselves, because we are the users as well.
I think as somebody who's in the early stages of a PhD, which looks at creative practice and health practice coming together, it seemed like a logical thing for me to get involved with. I've got a creative angle on this and I also have a researcher angle on this, so it's nice to see how the people who use it out on the battlefield kind of might use things.
I'm really hoping to learn much more about the AHPs. My background is in humanities and in comic studies, so it's not an area that I'm particularly familiar with, but I do expect to learn quite a bit from colleagues and people that I get to speak with.
I've just really liked the creative approach that Jenna's taking and all the communication. It was really kind of making me curious and thinking, oh, what's this going to be like? It's a bit different. So yeah, I think it'll give me some ideas as well about working with other people and working with groups, which isn't an intention of it, but I think I can see that already.
This is an exercise in bringing together people who are vastly different. So my hope is that bringing them all together works and it sparks creativity and we get some new and useful solutions to this hugely pervasive problem, which is how we ensure that we use research to inform and to improve practice.
I'm not quite sure what to expect, but I think that's part of the purpose of creative workshops, that you come in with a bit of a blank slate and have some fun and are creative, and hopefully something interesting comes out at the end of it.
I know that there are more specific aspirations perhaps to develop a tool or an algorithm or something that allows us to address the challenges that there are between generating the evidence and actually what we do with patients. And I think that's a multifaceted and complicated conundrum really around how evidence-based practice develops. I think on a personal basis I would find it stimulating and rewarding and hopefully expand my own thinking and knowledge around delivering evidence-based practice.
I think long-lasting and collaborative partnerships would be the primary hope and also objective, and to come up with creative solutions.
My hope is that we generate radically different ways of doing things and that's really sparked by that interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary connection.
Your thanks, Jenna, to everybody, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody next week.
In the first workshop, we spent time focusing on understanding what allied health professionals do, what decisions they make in their day-to-day practice, the types of knowledge that they draw on, to come up with a collective understanding of what useful knowledge actually looks like. And so today we're building on that, and we are generating as many ideas as possible to come up with new knowledge products. So new ways of presenting research that is more useful, more accessible, more relevant, more exciting, more easy to implement in practice. So what they're doing is they're taking part in a creativity cafe. So they're moving around a variety of tables. Each table is hosted by a different creative expert, and they are generating on post-it notes as many ideas as possible. And then later on this afternoon, they will select their best idea, and that will be the idea that they take forward to prototype in the next workshop.
So today we've been workshopping different ideas about what kind of knowledge products might best suit or might best work for AHPs. And now we've just broken into groups. We decided on which ideas each group is going to work on, and so we're just now in the process of developing prototypes.
We have been asked to think creatively, think out the box about how we can put together some tools. We can use some different methods of sharing information, of using new methods really of getting the messages out there that we want to. And it's been interesting, and I've had quite a few ideas that I'd never have thought of otherwise.
It's been really interesting talking to the creative people about how they could add value to what we're doing, and they see the issues and the mechanics of creating good visual creative products, which as practitioners, it's the last thought in your mind. I was worried about how you would benchmark quality within research in different forms that are not your traditional, you can read the author and it's in a 5-star journal and all these kind of things. But using the creative process, there are other ways that are more aesthetic that indicate quality as well. And it's not something you really think about when you're a practitioner or a researcher.
Today we've already talked about the possibility of a kind of Trivial Pursuit board game for AHPs, and also maybe some video reality games. The thing that surprised me most was we were given a task with a cup, an elastic band, a safety pin and a paperclip, and we had to come up with inventions. And I couldn't think of a single thing initially, but we actually came up with 4, which really did surprise me because that's so not my sort of thing.
The thing that has surprised me the most, and yet has also surprised me the least, is just how well people are working together. This was a huge gamble to take people who are so incredibly different and trap them in a room together and hope that they come up with some sort of shared understanding of each other that they could connect, and then to identify tangible ideas and projects. And it was what I hoped for, but I'm still surprised by how well they're working together and how much they seem to be getting out of it.
This process ongoing last week and this week is challenging my thinking, if you like, around my own experiential knowledge of models and what other things are available. So for example, the visual arts elements around things like developing comics to convey evidence, using art to convey evidence in a particular way, in a particular setting, which is, I suppose, quite different for me, given my experience.
The notion of storytelling is something that's emerged quite strongly from the group discussions, as well as really creative ideas about different knowledge products, so things to do with gaming, for example, and apps, as well as other kind of strategies I've found really interesting.
I think it's not necessarily making me think differently about my work as in the kind of research I do, but it is making me think more broadly about the kind of ways that we communicate with people.
It's probably made me think about when I'm sharing knowledge. So when I've gone to share some knowledge, I'm really thinking, now how am I going to share this? So I was doing that last week with a survey that had come in to be distributed to people. So instead of just sending it out, it was like, can I frame some questions, or can I ask other people about this? So it's not just the kind of, here you go, this will be interesting to you. So it's made me think about how I share information or knowledge.
So at the end of the last workshop, they had half an hour, 45 minutes to start putting together their ideas. And then there's been a flurry of communication during the week. People either using Slack or email or texting each other to share ideas about what resources they might need to bring along, so what materials they might need. And then they came in today, and normally we would have a sort of introduction session, but we didn't do that today. We just said come along, and basically from 12 until 2:30 is your time to work in your groups to develop your prototypes.
So today we are building or creating our prototypes for the research product. The best way I can describe that is chaos. It's a productive, hopefully, chaos and very creative. I can only speak to the group that I'm in because it's so all-encompassing, but we're looking at story writing, potentially filmmaking, creating a play. I don't think we're going to get it finished within the next 25 minutes, but we've got lots of ideas to move forward with.
So the group that I'm working with, we all chose storytelling as our main kind of strategy for sharing knowledge. So we all decided that we'd go away and each of us write a brief story of some kind. We've come together today and each of us has written a really different type of story. I wrote a play, someone wrote a kind of a personal reminiscence. So we're going to kind of workshop those in terms of how we can bring them together to help researchers and AHP professionals think about translating their research into practice.
Last week when we left, it was sort of, we had a bit of an idea of what we were going to do, but also that scary bit of like, what are we going to do? So yeah, the communication throughout the week has really kind of helped to get a better idea of that. I'm not saying that we have a full idea still of it, but just everybody's had a very different perspective, and we were sharing our own stories, and we were doing that by email. So it could really start to see the different types of styles and how we could bring that together. So it's already quite busy, and everyone's really focused on deciding how we're going to describe what we've been working on, and yeah, lots of ideas and different things on the table, and yeah, so it's got a real buzz about it actually.
From what seemed a bit of a vacuum, that oh my goodness, nothing's happening and nobody's thinking about this and we're not going to have anything to talk about, we've actually got quite a lot of things to talk about.
So we were in the group that was going to design a game for explaining evidence to people. And so over the week we've been talking about different game formats. There was suggestions for Cards Against Humanity, but we didn't quite think that worked. We'd also talked about Trivial Pursuit. We weren't quite sure about that. So we've now got a format that we've evolved during the week, which is a sort of patient journey through stroke. And on each side of the board we've got a different bit of the journey, and you spin a spinner that takes you to a colour-coded card, and the cards are going to be different types of questions. So some of them will be about evidence, some of them about experience, and some of them about events.
Our group was really formed around looking at ways of delivering information in short sound bites. We were calling it 2-minute talks. We'd have to do a Dragon's Den, I suppose, type punt of what it is that we're proposing. Exactly how that presentation is going to look right now, I'm not absolutely certain. Whether we will have actual product to show or whether we were just talking around what the proposition is, I'm not certain. We do have bits of material that we can link to, so it may be that we can demonstrate some of what we're talking about. But I think right now we probably won't be presenting a finished product, but hopefully we'll be giving a fair representation of what it might look like.
So our group was looking at the idea of stories, and stories is a way of sharing research findings.
You can look at your current articles, and then you can look at archived articles. So this is your own login.
So as we were kind of talking it through, somebody said, well, it's a bit like Pinterest for clinicians. So we decided to call it Clinterest. So this would be our Clinterest page.
We are hoping that it would be used with a research team, and we've called it Get a Grip. And the group stands for Getting Research into Practice.
I'd say there's been a big shift from last week to this week in terms of productivity and what everybody's doing. and it's happening really quickly.
I think I was surprised how quickly it came together actually, how easily the creatives on the team could just produce stuff.
For practitioners, they talk a lot about how time is a barrier. Time's a barrier to accessing research knowledge, and it's a time barrier when it comes to planning research projects or doing research projects. But what this is really evidence of is how much you can achieve in a really short space of time with really limited resource when you work with the right people. Last week we had a showcase of all of the prototypes that we had developed for our new knowledge products. So we had 7 in total, ranging from web-based ideas through to things that were a bit more tangible, like games. We had a couple of game ideas. One of the ideas that actually was my favourite, if you like, was the 2-minute talks, and the idea of having a Twitter channel at AHP 2-minute talks, where we have different allied health professionals videoing themselves talking about a piece of research or a piece of evidence and making it accessible to others.
I quite enjoyed the prototype that the group I was in was involved in developing, which was about storytelling, because it was difficult to maybe see at the beginning what it would end up looking like. So it was really good just to see it coming together, and we worked very well as a team, and before we knew it we had a little film made and a website template, and I could actually visualise it being used in practice, and thinking yes, that would be good. And I also really liked the Pinterest type prototype idea, because just the visual part of that, and yeah, being able to have something that people could visually see and then go further and further down into it and have a collection of what was of interest to them.
I thought the board game solutions, of which there were a couple, were very interesting. There probably wasn't one that stood out distinctly from the others, but I just recall that there was an exciting variety that we saw.
Jenna started today by encouraging us to think about constellations and the connections between stars. So she asked us all to start by a bit of creative play, making a star in whatever way we wanted, decorating it how we wanted, and the only thing that it had to include was our name. Then we stuck those up on a big black sky, and then she asked us to link to other stars, and it was a silver line for surprising connections, people you'd met that you'd never have met that you were really interested by, and gold for the people where it was something tangible that you were going to carry on working together.
For me, the highlight of the workshop series really has been meeting lots of different people, people that I would have never had the opportunity to meet in normal or in everyday circumstances.
I think it's taken me out of my sort of comfort zone and out of my box of what I expected to see research being showcased as. So I see it very differently now, and I think I've learned a lot from working with others.
I think one of the things the opportunity has done is to encourage people from very diverse backgrounds to think about what they can do together. And I think whatever is produced in the 4 weeks is a good starting point, but I really do think that just the fact that you've sowed seeds and you've met people who are interested in the same areas but think differently about it, that I think is the value going forward.
It's been very enlightening, it's been very thought-provoking. In some ways it's been challenging because perhaps it's not easy to go away from a comparatively safe place to somewhere that you're relatively exposed because it's unfamiliar. But I think I've got enough from the last 4 weeks to realise that we need to be doing that in some way, shape or form.
For me, the learning is think about how people receive information, think about how people want to share their knowledge, and can you do that in a more creative way that is more meaningful to people, if that makes sense.
What constitutes useful knowledge for practice is knowledge that is accessible, it is embodied, it's visual, you can observe it, you can feel it. That was one of the things that really came across from the practitioners, was useful knowledge to them is not big, long, written journal articles or written communication. It's about something that they can see and hear and feel. It becomes internalised It's not knowledge that sits outside of them and their sphere of practice. It's something that they take in, they internalise, and it becomes part of them. And if we can, as researchers, produce research knowledge in a way that can be consumed so that it becomes internal, then that's when we will have been really successful at creating research knowledge that is actually useful and usable for practice.